well now. It's kind of always for me, I'd like to leave all the questions, if there are any, at the end. And this shouldn't be a whole hour. I think it's a bit less. I think maybe 50 minutes, 45 minutes, but maybe an hour. I'm not sure. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Hello. Well, thank you so much for having me on this wonderful EA Zoom Meetings forum. I'm always so excited and honored to be presenting to your audiences. And so my name is Maya, and you can find out about everything I do in terms of astrology and a few other things on my website, darkamaterials.com. And at the end of this presentation, I have like a little, you can see the address, the URL, I mean. Basically, in a nutshell, I use astrology to help my clients do their shadow work. So astrology for shadow work is my kind of tagline. Today, however, oops, actually that was the second slide. So today, however, I want to share with you another favorite way of mine to work with astrology that I do, which is to plan ahead. So I'd like to first talk a little bit about why planning with astrology as opposed to planning without astrology. So, and I know both, I've been on both sides, or I've done both. I've done planning in both of those ways. So I don't know, 20 years ago or even 30 years ago, I wasn't using astrology for planning. So I would be deciding and figuring out my goals, my vision for my next couple of years, next year, for my future, if you like, just based on kind of externals, like looking out to the world, the role models I had, people I admired who inspired me. And I would say, oh, I really like what they do. It looks really good. They make it look good. How they come across to me is how I'd like to be. So based on those externals, I would kind of, have a list of my my wishes and my dreams to come true, kind of thing. And many would come true, as I'm quite a good manifester. But what would happen more often than not is that I would arrive at a point when I would achieve them, or near enough, or soon after, where I would be feeling like, is that it? Is that kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel exactly how I imagine it to be. Doesn't feel as good. I don't feel exactly elated as I saw this person, these people feel when they're on top of their game, and the game is the one I'm trying to emulate, maybe. My point here is that I was basically looking at this idea of success and what is meaningful, a great way to be, outside of myself. But when I started using astrology to understand and kind of decide and identify what my goals should be or are, I kind of felt I became more aligned with them. Because what astrology helps us do is first understand what our idea of success is, what our idea of satisfied and meaningful life is. We have in our chart a more unique blueprint for that journey, for that path, for that vision. So then once you identify that, you can align yourself with those goals and visions, as you said, are based on your kind of natal chart and on your actual unique, like I say, needs and wants and desires. So why plan with astrology is because you align yourself, and it's a more meaningful planning. But more interestingly, I found as I've been practicing doing this, is that day-to-day living, and actually there is day-to-day planning with astrology, which I'll cover in a moment, is far more intentional, and therefore it's like kind of you live more in the present than you would maybe otherwise, because you have to be aware and on the ball with what's going on in terms of the aspects and the transits, if those are the kind of methods you're using for planning. So I thought those three kind of keys, that it's meaningful, far more meaningful planning, and aligning myself better with my vision, and living more intentionally is just, if I haven't sold you the idea of planning with astrology with this, I don't know what will. So the few other kind of things, just to expand on this theme, is that you end up creating a more meaningful life. You contemplate this kind of way of this method allows you to contemplate your identity and life's purpose. It supports your personal growth. It catalyzes your soul's evolution. And one of my kind of favorites, because they are really quick to see how you see the results, is they're really great. Planning with astrology is great to manage difficult energies, prevent unnecessary conflict, and improve your relationships as a result of those last two things I mentioned. But before I kind of go into the details of those methods, I want to kind of give you a couple of planning tips. So you might be one of those people who maybe feel like you are not the best at manifesting what your dreams and desires. And maybe I'm not saying this is, you know, hard and fast rule, but maybe the reason is because you haven't identified your type, manifesting type. So in my understanding and knowledge and experience of manifesting, there are two types, and I'm bringing human design into this, just a little sidetrack. The rest is all astrology, and you don't need to know anything about human design. All you need to do, as it says at the bottom of this slide, just Google Jovian archive chart to get your human design chart. And it's Jovian archive chart, Google it, you have a link, free chart, something, go there, put your details in, and this is what you get, what's on this screen. Let me just do this quickly. So what's on this screen will be the chart, the PDF you'll download. What you want, so like I say, don't worry about the human design piece at all. What you want to look at is this that I circled in yellow here. So look at that arrow and see which side it's pointing towards as you are looking at it. So if it's pointing to the left, like it is on this particular, this is my example, that means you're a specific manifestor. And what that means, so for instance, if you want to manifest a particular, you know, an actual amount of money, let's say, that's an easy example, that you want to increase your income or your salary or whatever, or your number of followers, or, you know, you are someone, if this arrow is pointing to the left, like it's on this particular example, like say you're a specific manifestor, and then actually put a number of the followers, number of the money number, the financial number that you want. If you want to manifest a lover of your dreams, also go into detail, literally, like painting, drawing, the color of the eyes, the personality, like the full thing, you know, full picture, like creating almost like a film, a really good film where the character is really flashed out, right? If, however, this arrow is pointing the other direction to the right, then you're non-specific. So in that case, you know, as you go along with what I'm going to be sharing, my methods, if you know, start practicing and playing with it, bear in mind that maybe the specific is not your thing. You want to be really focusing on how you want to feel. So let's say you want to be interviewed, your dream is to be on Oprah, be interviewed by Oprah because you have a bestseller or something. I wouldn't actually, if you're a non-specific manifestor, I wouldn't focus on Oprah per se. I mean, just to start you, to get you going in terms of your conjuring up those emotions, how you want to feel as you sit on her couch. Once you get into the feeling, I would then forget about the details of the picture, whether it's Oprah or whoever equivalent of her is. That won't matter anymore for you. You want to work with the feeling, so don't get too specific. Don't get caught up in the specifics. So this is a little tip I wanted to share. And one last kind of tip about a planning caution. So again, I would imagine this is common knowledge. In fact, I think everything in this presentation of mine is nothing really new. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm just kind of bringing it all together in a way that I found super helpful. So eclipses are, as I'm sure you've experienced that too, are quite special times. And energetically speaking, my experience of them has always been that they're amplifiers and curveballs often. So the way I approach them and the way I would advise and suggest for you as well to at least consider, because they're so potent between the first and the last eclipse, however long that time frame is to be very mindful of what you're doing during that time, because essentially that's what you're amplifying. And whatever we are amplifying, we are attracting. We are saying to the universe, yeah, I want more of this. So be mindful of that. So some tips, for instance, I would, if the eclipse like the one coming up, I consider it light by comparison to the last January one we had, last winter eclipse, where I'm sure at least everyone I knew had a really heavy time. It was Pluto-Saturn conjunction. So my point here is that even if you can't raise your vibration and get all, you know, get more of what you want to attract, make sure that if you're heavy down with whatever energies are kind of pressing on you, make sure that you're in an empowering position. So work with them. Don't get into a victim mode in relation to what's pressing on you. Get really serious about the shadow work, inner work, soul work, whatever you want to call it, so that you amplify your ability, your skill, your wisdom on this particular piece of work, shadow work, right? So whatever you're doing, make sure that it is something you want to amplify. Other kind of little tips like vision boards, art journals, creating your own affirmation cards, are just more visual, less trying to control that time, but just be more open to the curveballs as well and see where they take you, but always get in the kind of driver's seat as much as you can, as well as the eclipse. So like both of you are in the driver's seat. So hopefully, yeah, so that is something I wanted to share. So the methods themselves. So this is, again, an obvious kind of thing, I suppose, but essentially it's transits. So I use transits. I use them for short-term planning for like daily, weekly, and monthly. And they're such fun and they're so effective. And you can start them tomorrow if you don't already do. But I suppose if you're watching this, you might not be doing because it's, yeah, of interest in you. So yeah, try, you'll see the results are immediate. Returns is another kind of transits method I use, but somewhat, you'll see, I'll explain each one of these slightly different, in sort of most traditional way of planning. And my favorite is specific life theme planning, if you like. And that's a very long term, or longer, certainly a couple of years at least, and longer. And then I use two types of standalone charts that I incorporate with my either, usually longer term planning. So one is solar return and another is progression. So like I say, I'll talk about each of these separately. And just so we're on the same page, again, obvious, but I just like to be, stating the obvious is I find always helpful. So when I talk about the transits method, I'm talking about you're looking at, you pick one natal planet that is stationed as in it's in your chart. So it's fixed in that sense, it's in a sign, degree, whatever. And then you pick another planet that you wanna, that's the transiting planet. So the pairing is important, and it's important which one you choose for which role. So I use transiting planet if I want the energies of that planet to infuse my natal planet. So as the transiting planet, so let's say I want boundaries in my relationships to be stronger, and I want them to be more serious and long lasting. So I'm using my Venus, natal Venus, and I'm going to use my Saturn because I want those energies of maturity and boundaries, Saturn, right? To be an integrity and, to be injecting my own Venus, because in my relationships, my Venus, I'm struggling with boundaries, let's say, right? So that's how I chose the Saturn to be the transiting planet, because as he moves and as he kind of goes from conjunction to the first square, as he approaches at the waxing aspect, part of the aspect, as he's approaching the exact orb, that's when the intensity, it's like it triggers and he activates my Venus, but it activates it with its own energies. So be very kind of mindful and intentional about which one you're choosing to be the teacher of your natal planet. And the key turning points, so obviously conjunctions, squares, and the oppositions, the obvious ones, the more kind of challenging ones. And I actually, for my short-term planning, like daily, like I say, weekly and monthly, I don't use trines and sextiles, but I definitely use trines and sextiles for longer, for a couple of years onwards, because they're important and they're certainly great respite and great opportunity times. So when you do some like big planning, and I'll show you all this in a moment. So short-term planning, and like I said, this is really fun. So it's essentially for, like I said, managing difficult energy. So something, a transit is approaching, and it's going to be tough, it's going to trigger you, it's intense, it brings up all kinds of stuff for you. So in advance how to plan that day, that week, ideally away from people if you can help it, or just be very mindful as you are engaging with people, which then takes me to the second point, that this is how you prevent the unnecessary conflict and therefore improve your relationships. So I kind of have, and sorry, I mentioned this thing about the waxing versus waning. So for me, in my experience, over and over again, it's the potency of a transit is really in its as it's approaching its exact orb. So that's waxing part of the transit. And then as it moves away from the exact orb, it wanes and it gets lesser. So I can now relax, and it's not crisis time anymore, let's say. So yeah, something else to maybe bear in mind as well. So in my natal column here, as you can see to the right, Pluto, South Node, Moon, Mars, and Saturn are my five must-haves. I'm vigilantly observing and paying attention to the transits to these planets in my natal chart. So Pluto is like, it's all that deep unconscious stuff, and I have Pluto is quite strong in my chart anyway, so it's intense time. So I'm, like I say, very careful what I do. I'm very intentional what I do with the time, depending on what planet transit transits it. So sun is a spotlight. It's like floodlights onto this darkness, or subconscious, in that sense, darkness, or other kind of darknesses as well. So it's a great time actually to have a long time with your Pluto, with the sun shining on it, and really contemplate, and really kind of get into your Pluto while the sun is on it, to see what you otherwise maybe wouldn't see so easily. Any transits of the moon to any of my natal planets, or any transit, well, actually more like this. So transiting moon to any of my natal planets, I definitely want to be kind of alone, solitary time, because moon is infusing those natal planets, and to know what it wants from it, and for me to also get more intuitive feel of my natal planet that the moon is transiting. I want to be in a moon space which is private, secluded. It's nighttime, isn't it? And at home, sort of safe, and want to feel it. I need that sort of silence, no distractions, to feel the transit. South node is so important. I don't know if it's talked enough about in transits. Maybe I'm just missing it, maybe it is. But because it's a fantastic opportunity to identify things you take for granted that are just part of your identity, that actually, when you really pay attention, you find that it's like the stuff that it's essentially a drain on your energy. It's not really, it's lackluster. You've done it to death and back, literally, in many lifetimes. So yeah, so sun in particular, sun always is like the floods, just like shining a bright light on that area of your chart. So great when sun is on your south node, really kind of pay attention to your patterns, and you will identify ones that are kind of ready to be discarded and, sent to a charity, kind of old clothes. Mercury transiting, like Pluto, for instance, your natal Pluto, is a great time to have really kind of honest, tough conversations, or get to the truth of your own, like have a therapy session, like a good therapy session, or self-therapy, journaling, just get to the bottom, like what's underneath, the issue, kind of Mercury, getting the information out. But like I say, in relationship is a great time to have that conversation, potentially. Just be mindful of all the kind of power games that could be the undercurrents of this aspect, and manipulations, and the usual kind of I'm right, you're wrong kind of polarity. Venus transiting Pluto is also a fantastic time. I found it every time I dare to step outside of my relational comfort zone and do stuff. It's not even about conversations, it's about how I relate to this other person. And I keep doing it. Sometimes I'm pushed by just like whatever universe. Sometimes I actually intentionally, consciously do it. And every time there is a transformation, I put my name on that every time. Now, far more often than not, it's not what I wanted, but that's kind of really neither here nor there. What's happened is that I'm done with the old issue, because I've shifted something and it's not really an issue anymore. Yeah, I'm over here. I wanted to be over there. I'm now over here after doing the Venus-Pluto transit, but actually I feel such relief, and I feel stronger and kind of more empowered for it. So I highly recommend it. As long as you can kind of tame the sort of whole kind of jealousy, again, possessiveness, insecurity, all that, obsessiveness, Venus, Pluto, right? Mars, transiting any of your planets, I would spend the time planning to be away from people, again, unless you're really good with your Mars and you know your Mars, because knowing your Mars will make you work with the transiting Mars far better. But if you tend to find yourself being triggered easily, then, and being quite, volatile and just aggressive, maybe in your communication, maybe just like I say, maybe spend some time to work on that away from others. And Saturn is anything on Saturn, on your natal Saturn, is kind of talking about your Saturn, and Saturn transiting your natal planet is kind of maturing them. So to understand your own Saturn, it's great to, again, spend some time alone with the transits, whatever they are, to your natal Saturn. And yeah, so those are just some tips. I mean, there are obviously all these permutations that can be happening. Let me just quickly check, Linda, in case you're leaving me some messages and I don't know, because I can't see the chat. No, good, okay. So that was short-term planning, daily, monthly, weekly. Now this is yearly planning. since I started using astrology for planning, I stopped doing the whole New Year's resolutions, because unless they're meaningful, again, in my own chart. And certainly we had the last eclipse was phenomenally meaningful, wasn't it, in January? So I was certainly doing all kinds of stuff around that before or after, anyway. But really, my absolute musts nowadays are my birthdays, or actually my solar return, because in your solar return, your birthday could be a day before or the day after, or the actual day. And then you have the exact time when the sun is in exact position as your birth sun. And so the kind of two main things that the solar returns are great in terms of planning is when you see your natal chart, or your solar return, chart for the year, and you see, for instance, that your natal sun that's otherwise in your 4th house, an example, right? All of a sudden your solar return chart is in the 10th house. It's a great opportunity to change your ways around, to kind of push yourself outside of a comfort zone maybe, and shine maybe more publicly. 10th house, right? That usually are quite shy and like to keep it, yourself kind of hidden, or, more private, right? And really kind of, you need to step outside a little bit, because your, I don't know, livelihood depends maybe on it, your business, or even your, self-worth, or your overall wellness and health would benefit from this kind of bigger exposure. And that year would be perfect to kind of gently or not so gently, depending where your sun is, push yourself outside more and outside of your comfort zone. So solar returns are great for changing behaviors, and also great to be weaved into bigger plans, into these bigger kind of longer term plans, which I'll talk about in a moment. When you look at your solar return chart, what you want to really know, there are 3 really players there, the key ones. So it's your sun, but it's obviously not the sign, because that's always the same, and the degree, but it's the house that your sun is in, and any aspects, mostly conjunctions, squares, and oppositions. Then you want to look at your ascendant, which is, I think every year is different, maybe not literally, but I think in my case for the last 10 and for the next 10 it is. So so the ascendant, and then the ruler of the ascendant, which is the ruler of your chart. And so those 3 also watch for what there are in what are their particular aspects, if there are in any kind of intense and important aspect. At least how I use it. I mean, this is just how I use it. So returns, when I talk about planning with returns, it's really to plan when they're happening, when the return is happening, but also when is the first last 4 square another return. So you plan for those times, you kind of block that time out as an important time to live with your planet. So but why I use returns? And why I recommend is to understand not just what you read in every had astrologers tell you and all that, just to understand your very own Venus in Taurus. You start with a conjunction, and all you do essentially, and then the variation on this is just you live with that archetype. You read everything Venus, you read everything Taurus, you talk, you do everything Venus Taurus, right, on that day, on that week. And then you feel what's coming up. You kind of feel into it. Whatever your modalities, you kind of your whether you're more cerebral or more body embodiment, kind of energetic work you like, or mixture of all of it. And then the other beauty, so that's kind of that's your starting point. But then you have square, and the first square, the opposition, and the last square. What they're essentially doing, they're the kind of crisis points that kind of chisel your Venus into this uniquely your Venus. And it's also about integrating those. So Venus would then you'd have to integrate Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius archetypes into your Venus, in the sense to feel what are these other 3 players, characters in the story of your Venus. What's their role? What do they want from you when they trigger you, when they trip you up, when they embrace you, when they face you, illuminate you, whatever. You want to have a conversation with them, and that will that will amalgamate your own Venus and integrate whatever you need to integrate, not all of it, just whatever it is for you meaningful. And also an important thing to look back at the previous returns to get a sense of themes that will be potentially repeating themselves, but asking for some new, maybe, perspectives, and just like to see what you were experiencing with Venus, your Venus in Taurus in the past, if you're old enough to have more of them. And progressions, how I use them. So as a standalone chart, to integrate in my kind of longer term. So if you have natal planets that are retrograde, then be very mindful and pay attention to when that planet goes direct by progression. Equally, if all the other planets that are not retrograde, that can go retrograde, that you have just non-retrograde in a natal chart, pay attention when they go retrograde by progression. So in either of these cases, you will notice kind of you change the way you engage with that archetype. So if it turns retrograde, and I can speak to my Mercury going retrograde, it was like you just become that planet. It feels like you're just you and that planet, and you're in this dance together, and it's like it doesn't matter, anything external kind of doesn't matter so much. It's like what's coming from them to you, them being the archetype of the planet, and you kind of almost create, that's what retrogrades are for, really, whether natally or by progression or by transit, is to make us get us to establish our own unique relationship. So that's why it's a close dance with that planet when your natal direct one turns retrograde. But when your natal retrograde turns direct, it's kind of a time to whatever you've been figuring out about that planet until it turned direct by progression. And that maybe now it's time for you to share your wisdom, either about the planet or whatever its functions have been in your life, whatever its purpose has been in your life. Now it's time to kind of go forward with it. And that could be going public with it, I don't know, sharing it in some form or another, or just like moving forward with whatever work you've done during its retrograde phase in terms of progressions. So that's why progressions are fantastically helpful. And we now come to this, like the greatest fun for me type of planning. I call it kind of cumbersomely, maybe specific life theme. I don't know what else to call it, but that's kind of what it is. It's in essence, that's choosing an area of your life that you want to improve on. Then looking at the astrology. So where does that theme that you want to improve on in your life, where does it live in your chart? What house is that? What planet is that? And planets. And I'll talk about that in a second. So you identified all that. And then you set your vision for it. And then you create a plan of action, and then you execute it. It's kind of as simple as that. But it's actually quite complex, I think, and complicated. And I don't think we'll have time to maybe show you an example, but we'll see. But I'll talk you through the method and the process. Okay, so the first step, and if you know me, have seen my videos, you know I'll keep going on about this this book. But yeah, it's a great kind of resource for the archetypal universe by Ram Butler. It's like a great reference for understanding the archetypes and how they relate to your life themes. So first I will start by just thinking up, identify the area of your life that you want to, you just don't, you want to do more or better, or you want to improve, right? And then look at what planets are speaking to you when you are addressing that problem. So for instance, you, let's say you want to be more courageous in claiming and requesting your needs to be met, or just declaring what it is that you need, or declaring that, asking for help. So I would be looking to Mars and Moon. I would be pairing those two up and planning accordingly how to start getting better at this. Moon being needs, Mars being courage, right? If you feel like you struggle to speak your truth, or you kind of are one of those people, was more so maybe than now, I really feared conflict, and I would hate to have an argument and just be in a, like have a confrontation with someone, right? Not anymore, but for a long time in my youth or younger days. So I would be looking, if that was me, my client now, I would be suggesting for them to go look at Mercury and Mars so that I'm more comfortable with conflict. I don't feel like I would just lose my rag, or I would get too flustered, or I would get scared, or whatever. You know, I would actually hold my ground, but be reasonable, be factual, be objective, Mercury, right? But equally strong and, you know, courageous to just stand the ground in the face of confrontation. So Mars, Mercury. If you want, again, relationships and boundaries, Venus and Saturn, and you get my gist basically. So but just pair them up as per your, whatever theme it is, whatever area of your life you need improvement. And you want 2 planets, obviously. So the step 2 is understanding them. So first, this is kind of the meatiest part that you spend a lot of time. This is like pre-planning phase. So first you want to understand them individually. And that is just like basic, I suppose, astrology studies, which is like the sign, the house, the ruler, who they rule, who rules them, and all that stuff. So individually, you get to the heart of them. I personally love introducing different modalities: numerology, human design, gene keys in particular, and anything else. I can't think of anything at the moment, but I've been through many different ones. And just integrate, if you can, as well, to just kind of beef up, you know, that your understanding of them and your feeling for your natal planets, the 2 in question here. The next piece is even more important, and that is to understand their relationship. And why I stress this is because I imagine, well, probably maybe everyone here knows this already on EA, evolutionary astrology, but anyone else who's not into EA and hears this will maybe find this as a kind of novelty or new information, is that planets can be in aspects, obviously, and that's like when they're in, you know, following the rules of astrology, they're in a certain, you know, orb and in relation to each other, and then they form that aspect, square, trine, whatever. And that's easy. We know the aspect, and we have all kinds of aspect, the main one, the less main ones, and for that, if you don't know your aspect, you know what they are, sorry, but you don't understand them fully, a great book for that is Astrological Aspects, a process-driven approach by Layla Rael and Dane Raja. So that's your fantastic book to dive deep into your aspects. So those 2 planets you picked, they're in aspect. That's your book if you're not 100% sure of your aspect and what it means. However, even when 2 planets are not in aspect, they're in a relationship always. And this is from Ari Moshe's book, which is another one I recommend. If you don't have that, they're not in aspect, but they're in a relationship, that's the book you want to get. It's so well written, it's so easily graspable, and it's a pretty complex kind of, it's not a concept, but, well, it is maybe a concept, and it's not easy, but that book is great. It'll set you straight on the phasal relationship of the planets. So, for instance, I drew here. This is, like I say, from Ari Moshe's book, Evolutionary Astrology: Beginner's Guide. So the red here, if you can see, it's Mars and Neptune. They're in conjunction. That's like, you know, textbook astrology conjunction. But you could have Neptune at 0, let's say Leo, whatever, Aries. And then you have Mars, which the 2 planets that you're working with, right? Mars is neither in opposition nor it's in a triseptile, which are the 2 kind of aspects, and it's in between them. It's in no man's land. So in theory, in essence, it's not in an aspect to Neptune, but they're in a relationship, and the relationship is called gibbous, and that tells you a lot about how your Mars and Neptunes are relating to each other. So now you know their dynamic, natal dynamic. When you plan for them and plan your work around them, you'll have so much more wisdom and skill to navigate those waters as you get challenges, as you get to squares and oppositions and other squares. And then the third piece in understanding your 2 planets that you chose and their relationship is to look back at their last contact. It doesn't matter what it was. Conjunctions are always like a fusion, but equally, or any contact, particularly those kind of challenging opposition and squares and conjunction, are important to look back at those times and see what was going on regarding their themes, but also in relation to this vision of yours, this area of your life you want to improve. Step 3 is, so this is kind of just like now doing the noting, basically taking down all the timelines, all the dates for when these 2 planets got. So you chose one is your natal, right, and one is transiting, like I explained a couple of slides ago. So when was the conjunction, or is the conjunction? Conjunction is really important. And I'll talk in a moment a little bit more about it. But so if you're starting, let's say after today, you want to start doing one of these things and you pick 2 planets, and then the conjunction actually happened a year ago or a few months ago, or maybe 5 years ago. So the further back it happened, the maybe harder it will be for you to kind of extract the message of that conjunction. The closer to your today, right, it will be probably easier. So do your best. We'll see what you can do, but see what you can extract, as in terms of maybe you have journals from the time, or you can even remember what was going on in your life. Again, think of the theme that you were planning. You're aiming for your vision, right? Your goals, your theme. And so in relation to that, what was going on in your life? If you can kind of, like I say, extract as much information as you can. Then look for the rest. So the next is sextile, the first quarter, the trine, the opposition, the waning trine, the last quarter, and the waning sextile. So get those dates down for all of them. And like I say, if it's coming up, the conjunction, fantastic, you're in luck. That's the best way to do it. But to do the whole process fully intentionally, it's perfect. But it's still, nothing's lost if you need to look back a little bit. So step 4 is now kind of creating a timeline and flashing it more out and adding more to it. So another important things to pay close attention to is any stations of this transiting planet to your natal planet. So direct or retrograde. So if it's a station direct, that I usually have taken that, and in my experience, that was kind of what it transpired to be its message, but that could be just me. And that is that it's kind of time to move forward with whatever I've been doing at that point. If it's stationing retrograde at one of those key points that I showed you earlier, then it's time to maybe revisit and review what I've done up until that point. But I use one orb. Personally, I just use one orb. It needs to be for me to take, real notice of this event on my timeline. I use one orb, so it has to be happening on exact orb to my natal planet. So if it's a conjunction, it's literally sitting on my planet, or if it's any others, it's in one orb. Otherwise, I don't work with it. Also, now you bring in solar returns. So this is, a few years in advance. Let's say 5-year plan of something of your, vision, dream come true. And you look for each year, you look at your solar return, and what you're looking again for your sun, your chart ruler, and your ascendant, your first calls. Those 3 are your first calls, to see if any of the transiting planet in particular is making a conjunction or any important aspect to, or to your natal planet that you're working with in this pair, right? So that's how you bring in your solar returns that you've done for every year in this longer timeline. Also, any other personal transits. So particularly again, if they're kind of supportive of your theme. But even so for instance, if this has nothing to do with moon, and yet you have Pluto transiting your moon, either conjunction or any other opposition or square, I would very much pay attention to that and kind of let that influence your plan very much so, because Pluto transiting moon, it's no small feat, and it's an important time, and it's an intense time, and it's major transformation, and so you kind of don't want to miss it, when you can't, even if you try. But it will affect your journey, so take that into account. And obviously then any world transit. So for instance, if after today you kind of go, oh great, I can start doing my own planning now on this or the other, remember we are having Saturn and Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius in a few weeks' time, isn't it? In December, I think. And I'm looking at my calendar here, I can't see. You might not be doing anything in your chart, and maybe nothing to those 2 planets that you're working with, but it's going to be affecting you. It's an important big event, celestial event or universal event, energetic event, however you like to call it. I would very much take that into account and see what it actually is doing in your chart and how it is potentially affecting, even if indirectly, your plan. And okay, so yeah, like I said, this is going to be a shorter, although I have an example of my own if we have time and if people are interested, or we don't have to because it's my own personal, just to kind of show you how it works. But this is the skeleton of it. So this is step 5, and essentially this is how you now plan and what you need to kind of do at each of those key milestones. So the key milestones are the conjunction, the waxing sextile, the first quarter square, the waxing, if I'm pronouncing the right, waxing trine, opposition, waning trine, last quarter square, waning sextile, and again, new conjunction. But that's really, it's waning sextile, kind of, it wraps it up, and then before, you know, and then the new conjunction is the new start. So conjunctions are, that's why I said, are so important. That's the time, if it's happening, if you're starting to start doing this work today, and this conjunction of the 2 planets is happening in the near future, book that time out. Sorry, my lips are dry. Book it out to, you know, just a long time to really feel those 2 planets working on you, because they're working on you. It's like it's a new moon phase. It's a dark phase. It's alchemy. It's like the cauldron of the 2 energetically are meshed and infusing each other and merging with each other. And you're feeling it all. It's happening to you and for you and in you and within you and in your chart. So dedicate some time to spend with those 2 archetypes. And this is not time for planning. This is just the time to feel and contemplate this vision that you have set up and you have rather identified as the area of your life you want to improve. So you don't have intentions yet set, you don't have a plan, you don't have even, you know, written kind of like an outline of it. At this stage, you know generally what it is, and now you're sitting with these 2 and letting them speak to you, and whatever it is they're going to tell you is going to inform your vision. And remember, you are essentially planning for the waning trine. So that's the time for this vision, this dream, to come to full fruition, to its highest potential, if you like, to its greatest, widest opportunity that you can think of, that you can imagine. So if you're dreaming big, that's your big dream, is your waning trine time, yeah? So, and you'll see why. So you've done all this, so you know this is conjunction. Now, depending what you're working with, what 2 planets you're working with, this could be within a year or 2, but if it's longer, you will then decide whether you need maybe a full month of sitting with this conjunction that just happened, because there'll be a couple of years before the waxing sextile. So you want to really take your time with your vision and flashing it out and writing it down and having it more specified. Or you might be like a couple of days after the conjunction, you want to do it because the waxing sextile is approaching in 6 months or 3 months or something. So that's how you decide when you're going to start actually writing down this vision, after the conjunction, after everything you downloaded, or whatever term you use. So after you've done that, you set your vision in kind of more concrete ways, like vision board, you know, writing literally words, affirmations, you know, describing it, however. You don't want to, you're looking to your waxing sextile, and you want to plan for the waxing sextile to be so let's use an analogy of book. Like, you want to have a movie deal on the back of your bestseller, and you have Oprah interviewing as well. So if that's your vision that you set on the conjunction phase, by the waxing sextile, you want to have, so between your conjunction and the waxing sextile, you are researching for your book. So that's the kind of work you're just getting this, experimenting, finding out, just feeling your way around this book, whatever you decided, or even the title maybe is, but certainly what you're writing about, the topic. And then by the waxing sextile, you have everything to then start writing your first draft, right? Then at the first quarter square, it's time to edit. So this is what they often say for many writers is the toughest piece, because it's like now they have to kill their darlings. I think that's Stephen King is his quote, I'm pretty sure, because, or maybe I'm misquoting. Anyway, so you need to edit. You need to now get rid of a lot. You need to rewrite. So that's like kind of decision and action time. You need to change. The change square is always a change of direction. So now you're changing this first draft, right? As it always is. You're writing a second. Waxing trine. So you're doing that in the run up to the waxing trine. Plan for not 2 things. Plan for 2 things: to be open to opportunities that come your way. So because trine is like a lovely breeze. It's just like you're feeling lovely and something's coming your way, and you might just miss it because it's just all relaxed and everything seems, there's no sense of crisis. And in project management, which is where all this fascination and geekiness about planning comes from. I used to be a project manager. We used to say in change management, it's like there's no change unless there is a sense of urgency. No one's going to bother if there is no sense of urgency. So with tries, why they're called lazy aspects is because it's like, there's no sense of urgency. Yeah, it's great, lovely, and you miss it. And you don't milk it enough. You don't get the most out of it. So be really vigilant about this. Be careful that you don't miss opportunities, but also create them. So in the storyline I'm making up here, is the time to find beta readers, to create a blog. And I certainly know many that have done this, kind of like to start publicizing and teasing the public with what you're writing. So create those opportunities that will, at a waning trine, become something far bigger and more, right? So that's what you're doing at a waxing trine. And the time of opposition comes. For that, prepare yourself for feedback. Whether you're ready or not, it's coming your way, because opposition is a full moon phase kind of moment. And the sun is, you're literally under the floodlights, again, these floodlights or the spotlight, and the visibility is there. And if you look at the chart, it's like the 7th house, the Libra, where it's above the horizon. So you're literally coming out and the world is going, oh, hey, I can see you. Oh, I like what you're doing. Oh, God, I don't like what you're doing. You'll be getting both. And with this book, right? So that's the time to publish. And you will have, and many, if you're writing books, you know what I'm talking about, dread the moment of feedback and bad reviews and great reviews. So now that what you're planning for that, the publishing, but also kind of your to-do list, your task, your project, your task, let's say, are to listen. So that's like a higher vibration, Libra, if you like. Listen very carefully to your feedback, but do integrate, not on the expense of your own individual style. Don't sell out just for the praise, just for the sales. So that's the Aries piece. So you listen, Libra, but you keep your independence and your integrity in the sense of your uniqueness, right? Your Aries, of your style. So, but you modify because it's your first book, let's say, there is stuff that you can improve. So listen and improve, but don't sell out, kind of thing. So that's a fine balance to play, Libra, right? To tread or to walk. And so now the waning trine, what you're planning for that, let's say you're writing a sequel based on this feedback. So you've taken the bad reviews and you incorporated and improved on the back of them. And you also, build on the good stuff that you got the good reviews for. And now you're writing either a sequel or you're writing adaptation for the movie, for the theater, play, or whatever, based again on this feedback. And at this point, you have already done a lot of stuff for the waxing, try and set yourself up for these opportunities. Now you have producers coming your way, offering you, or you made already contacts for that. So that would have been, again, things to do at a waxing trine to, find those potential contacts that will serve you well in your waning trine phase now. And they help you now disseminate this. And this is a piece of the collaboration at the waning trine. So plan for collaborations, disseminate this piece, and it's your masterpiece. And it's for that project, for that journey, for that piece of work. And it's like, a bestseller and a blockbuster, and you're on operas or someone's coach, CAUT, I meant, and being interviewed of how successful you are. And then as you're kind of bathing, obviously bathing that, love it for a while, but as you approach last quarter square and as you kind of cross over into that last quarter of the whole, circle, zodiac circle, that's the step between the move from Capricorn to Aquarius, or from Saturn to Uranus, which is essentially asking us to leave behind what supported us up until that point and served us well. But we just feel like, it's a bit tired and old, Capricorn, it's ready to be left to die, Capricorn, Saturn, right? I don't need to carry it and drag what's the expression, horse something, anyway. So for instance, you might you might have started already feeling this during the even opposition phase, is like, after this, I kind of fancy having a go at like science fiction. And this was, let's say, romance, like a love story or something, or you want to do history fiction, like very different to what you've been doing, and what made you famous and what made you realize your dream. So now you start to feel genuinely like desire to move into something very different, Saturn, Aquarius, Saturn, Uranus, Capricorn, Aquarius, right? Very different. And that's kind of scary because you're leaving behind this great support, this status you have achieved. And that phase is called reorientation. And it's important to do, and it's the toughest of the two squares, or the tougher of the two squares. And then, so you've done that, don't forget to do that. Because you'll be lagging and bringing all kinds of stuff that it will just become a weight and a burden and, you know, suffocate your creativity, right? So now you passed the threshold, you've done that, you made those decisions, you cut those, you know, you essentially have dropped half of your fans. You know, that's why it's difficult, this square. You're leaving the good stuff behind, but because that's it, it's all, you know, its shelf life is gone. So you're coming up to the waning sextile, and it's a nice time. It's kind of, it's the worst is over. You got over all that. Your ego survived, and you're thriving creatively, or you can feel the juices going. Maybe not thriving just as yet. They will come after the new conjunction, maybe. But you're now reorganizing yourself and setting yourself up. So that's kind of wrapping up time, and you're approaching then balsamic phase in between waning sextile and new conjunction, where it's really you're making peace with what's been and what's been, you know, done, and you're congratulating yourself, but you're really ready for something new and quite different to what you've done up until that point. And actually, I'm bang on time, I think. So this is it. This is how you plan with astrology. So let me see what I have in terms of chat, because I can't hear anyone. Thank you, Annie Kato, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much, and love you all, and hopefully this was helpful, and see you another time.